guess, how are we doing today? Any questions bubbling up this past week? Requests. We could also do some meditation practice at some point this hour too.
Objects of meditation.
Oh, sorry, we lost you, Lou. I heard you at first.
Okay, I know you're not supposed to switch back and forth between objects of meditation. I guess when you find when you're supposed to stick with it. And how big a deal is it? Because I had a couple of operations on my nose because of skin cancer, and I don't have that feeling here anymore of the air rushing over my nose, because this is actually my cheek. So anyway, so I need to switch objects of meditation, and I was wondering if that's going to throw everything in an uproar, or if that's something that just resolves itself pretty quickly.
Yeah, no, especially if it's a more suitable one. So there's tons of objects of meditation. So it's about finding the one that's suitable. Personally, I never really clicked with the sensations at the nose so much. I center more in the movement of the abdomen, the feeling of the breath in the abdomen. It's been more, it's been that kind of where I place my awareness.
Do you know if you they say you can meditate on an image?
Yes.
Okay, say it's an image of the Buddha or something. When you're meditating on an image, aren't you bringing up a conceptual object in your mind? I mean, isn't that like a concept? Whereas the feeling of the air on your nose or your abdomen, it's not so much a concept as a feeling.
Yep. Yeah.
But it still works, even if it is a conception.
Yeah. Because the Buddha as an object, mental image, it's still holding the mind. So it's basically just having something to kind of anchor the awareness, anchor the mindfulness, which allows it to settle. So you can absolutely meditate on a concept single pointedly. So like last week when we were talking about an analytical meditation or a contemplative meditation, where you're meditating on a topic, and so it's discursive at first. You're kind of thinking, and then when an understanding dawns, that understanding that's when you drop the discursiveness and just single pointedly abide on that understanding. So that feeling, that felt understanding, and which is a conceptual mind.
So the important thing is the single pointedness, not necessarily whether it's a conception or a feeling. It's the single pointedness that's important.
Yeah, single pointedness, or just the kind of connection to the object, the kind of stability, kind of stabilizing with it, anchoring to it. A lot of different ways of putting it. Sometimes single pointed for me, like concentration as a word for me, kind of makes me feel like I'm squeezing a little bit, like juice concentrate a lot in a little space, so there's like a bit of a concentration. Some people that actually works fantastically, but I get kind of almost like it's irritated, like the focus is too strong or something.
Too tight. Yeah.
Too tight. Yeah, too tight. So I kind of I orient more towards just the kind of abiding with it, the presencing myself with it, kind of stabilizing, maybe holding, or kind of being with the anchoring to it, being with the objects, and say, or single point, having the kind of single pointedness with it.
I guess go ahead.
Do you actually have to focus on anything? I know you were trying to achieve something, but I mean, I could meditate without focusing on anything. I mean, I don't know if that achieves anything, but I guess it's more relaxation meditation more than trying to gain any insights, because I could go and try and gain insight as well if I try and focus on something.
So that's a technique as well. So there's this kind of Buddhist tradition, we talk about mindfulness and awareness, and the mindfulness is that part of the mind that's mindfulness in Tibetan. It means kind of like memory. Drenpa means kind of like memory, but not like I'm reminiscing, more like I'm just remembering what I'm doing in the moment, right? Like this kind of momentary memory kind of thing. So part of the mind is kind of doing this kind of remembering, or this is what I'm doing. And then then there's this kind of awareness, almost kind of like this as the basic space. And objectless meditation is practice in the Buddhist tradition. So you would start with an object to stabilize the mind, and then let go of the object when the mind's stable enough, if that's a style of meditation going. So it's almost like you just let go into awareness. The challenge with the objectless meditation is awareness is quite subtle, and so always the issue is like, are we too excited, or are we spaced out or dull?
Yeah.
And so it can be like, I feel like I'm not meditating on an object, but it might be a conception of, are we resting in vivid, fresh awareness, or is it kind of a thought of the awareness?
Just resting and falling asleep.
Or just falling, or just kind of spacing out, which feels good.
Exactly.
It feels good, but if we're repeatedly spacing out during meditation, basically we're kind of creating a kind of mental habit of almost like a dulling, or kind of spacing out, basically. So that's the challenge with that style. So there's always a challenge with anything we do. So, but the kind of challenge with the objectless meditation is that it's because the awareness is subtle. It's hard to know if we're actually resting in awareness or not. And typically in the Buddhist tradition, objectless meditation is kind of a jumping off point after we've done a lot of object meditation. So we would do a lot of meditation with an object for quite a while, and then the object becomes awareness, and then, which is interesting, you can meditate on awareness, and it's still kind of an object, and then eventually you kind of just you realize you're still kind of holding something, and you just kind of let that go. But then it's quite a subtle process.
That's what I was going to say. Isn't it kind of like the opposite? It is the opposite, obviously, object versus you focusing on an object. You're kind of almost waiting for the awareness to get to you, instead of you focusing on something and being aware of it. This is my take of it.
Huh. Yeah, um, one of my meditation teachers, when he talked about using awareness as an object, he would say patience, being patient with the process, and it's kind of like is it a waxing moon? Like it's almost like you gotta wait for the moon to kind of fully show itself, because there's like a settling of the conceptual mind is busy, and that has to kind of settle. And then when the conceptual mind settles sufficiently, and we're holding awareness as an object, that kind of the quality of where when the awareness is clear, it's clear and kind of luminous. They call the two kind of qualities, like clarity and luminosity, are the kind of qualities of the awareness. That's when the conceptual minds kind of settle down, subsided. And yeah, you can't make that happen. Generally, it's a kind of a natural kind of it has to illuminate itself through your practice. Yeah, but it's again the two principles in Buddhist meditation. There's the calming, stabilizing, and then there's the kind of insight, kind of opening into insight. And pretty much those two categories hold all the practices in the Buddhist tradition. So there's all these different objects you can use to kind of create that stability, and they have different flavors and kind of different ways that they help. And then and there's different techniques to kind of develop that kind of penetrating insight or kind of awakening insight. Yeah. So again, come back to the image of the Buddha, or you can use a candle, candle flame. If you want to use a physical image outside, like a pebble, a pebble or a candle flame is kind of a traditional thing. Or or a Buddhist kind of a Buddha statue, but you want to maybe focus on an aspect of the Buddha statue. If you're like a visual, you want to work with your eyes open. That has a different kind of quality to it.
Can't do that.
Yeah. Yeah. No.
Yeah. I could do sound. I could do just closing my eyes, but I cannot do visual. It just doesn't quiet the mind at all.
Yeah, and I think that's why there's so many different objects, because there's so many different people, so many different styles. We resonate with some, won't resonate with others, and it's not a judgment thing. It's just kind of our constitution. Yep. Yeah. And people have some trouble with some people can connect with the visualization image. Others can't. And with the visualization is a tricky word too, because then it also has this kind of relationship with eyes, and it's kind of a mental image. It's like a mental image. It's not a visual image in the mind.
Yeah.
And that throws,
Yeah, every time I've tried it, it's a fight to keep my eyes from looking at the image I'm trying to visualize.
Even it's like this weird thing. Yeah.
Even if it is just a mental image, my eyes want to go there.
Yeah, you can. Yeah, for me too. I feel my eyes are like they're activated. Yeah. 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 So if that's tricky, maybe moving to a different part of the body.
Yeah.
I typically have kind of learned like a body scan process where eventually I develop awareness of the sensations and feeling through my body as a whole, and then that becomes kind of my basis. That's where I hold my attention. So I'm breathing and I'm just feeling the flow of sensation and feeling throughout the body. And typically that would, you could just start with the scan, there's lots of body scan meditations out there where, you just start with feeling here and then feeling here in your mind, not with your hands. But I guess you could, it might help. But yeah, then kind of going through and then sweeping it to where it's like you're almost like kind of waking up your awareness in the body. I find that's been helpful for me also, because sometimes like a lot of my energy is kind of located centered in my head, and it just kind of helps bring my energy down, which helps settle my mind more. It's interesting, like if you bring your awareness into different parts of the body, it has different effects. So also I think bringing focusing on the feeling of the movement in the abdomen, like my awareness is kind of lower in my body, which for people that are more up and kind of thinkers and imaginative, maybe high, buzzy types, like kind of bringing the awareness down can actually kind of be a balancing effect. Maybe people who are more with like sleepiness or kind of low energies, more where we're operating from, the kind of nose sensation can be helpful as well. Yeah, and the trick being with the feeling is the feelings is a non-conceptual. It's not conceptual. It's a immediate sensation. So it's kind of helping us stay in a more preconceived, kind of start to ground part of ourselves in the preconceptual moment present. Because there's always, every moment of mind, there's an experience and then a interpretation, reaction. I see red, my mind labels red. First there's the visual sensation of red, pre-thought, and then my mind labels red instantly, but it's a successive thing. So the sensation in the body, then it's like, mind's like, ouch, there's, so yeah, the sensation, this just trying to help us get into the immediate mind, slowly. And yeah, and starting to familiarize ourselves with the non-reactive mind, the state of mind before our mental reactions. Yeah. With the Buddha meditating on the deity, or they call them meditational deities, but these kind of visual image Buddhas. We can kind of go through, like, there's always like a kind of a script, kind of a descriptor of the image. So the Buddha sitting cross-legged on a lotus. He's holding his lap. He has a bowl of nectar, and the right hand's over his knees, golden in color, radiant, kind of aspects and qualities. And we kind of go through that scan. And it's almost like, so that would be like that's like the contemplative meditation. So you kind of going through that kind of mental movement, kind of building the visualization. But the most important thing is to have that kind of, it's like a sense, having a felt kind of awareness of the Buddha. So you kind of, it's almost like you're kind of sensing, like, what would it be like if the Buddha was in this space with me right now, this radiant, thinking of what Buddha is, it's kind of radiant, unconditional awareness and presence and love, it's kind of powerful, loving presence. that's the most important thing. And if you can kind of hold that kind of feeling of presence of the Buddha for a while, that can be a powerful object of contemplation. Because somehow it's like mirroring back to us. It's like that's communicating the Buddha nature. The fact that we can sense that, and that we're actually having a feeling of what that unconditional, what that is. It's like a powerful communication that's happening. So they say it's like a virtuous object in the sense that it has these kind of extra qualities to it, that it's a neutral object, like the felt experience of the breath, of the body. It's just sensation. But with the Buddha image, one of the benefits of it, we can connect to it that way, is kind of communicating that it's kind of qualities of mind that can be very supportive, which is interesting. And typically in a practice where you would be visualizing a Buddha deity, oftentimes it's kind of a beautiful metaphor. I wouldn't just say it's it's more than a metaphor. I wouldn't just say it's just kind of made up or imaginative necessarily, but the Buddha is always outside of you at first, creating this kind of relationship, communication, and then the Buddha kind of comes to your crown and then kind of dissolves into you and kind of permeates you, radiates through you, and there's a sense of kind of union or oneness, where you just feel your mind and Buddha's mind, and your body, Buddha's body, your speech and Buddha's speech is inseparably mixed, and kind of like a blessing kind of feeling. Just dissolving that barrier.
How does one achieve this?
I just imagine it over and 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 over again.
That's a lot of over and overs.
There's more overs than that. That was only a few overs. Actually, that's funny. We were talking about this. Maybe we could do that for a short time at the end. Maybe we can spend the last 15, 20 minutes of doing it.
So this concept of, not a concept, I mean, I guess the properties are the things you'd want to be reflect in your own life. Those fine qualities of being a good person and being helpful and altruistic and all this other stuff. I mean, it's not just, it could be anybody or anything, right? With these qualities.
Yeah.
I mean, there's tons of religions out there that, they kind of pull the same image of their, I could say God, but their deity, whatever it is.
Yeah.
So whatever works.
Absolutely. Yeah, there's a story of this Episcopalian priest. Can't remember the exact denomination, but he's a priest or minister, and he was trained with a Tibetan Lama, and the Lama just said, yeah, just visualize Jesus. So just use the Tibetan system of meditation, but you swapped it. Instead of the Buddha, you imagine Jesus, and you can imagine and Jesus comes into you, dissolves into your heart. It's very powerful, actually. And like when I visit family, maybe go to a mass one here and there, and they're taking the Eucharist, and the mass ritual is very similar to kind of some ritual meditations in the Tibetan tradition. And the Tibetan tradition has instructions about how to meditate when, like you're taking the body of Christ into your body, and you just feel this unity. Like we have profound, amazing instructions about how to precise instructions about what to do to get the most out of that experience, to really get it. Like what does that mean? Like feeling that unity and oneness. How deep can that be, or how can we really dissolve those barriers so the unity is actualized? Because from a philosophical point of view, the nature of our mind and the nature of Buddha's minds, the nature level is exactly the same. The only difference is Buddha has awakened to it, realized it, and maybe we haven't. So, and it's not something that we create. It's actually just something we finally recognize that's been here the whole time. So this kind of process of where we visualize the Buddha outside of ourselves, we draw inspiration from that. And in the tradition, is kind of like reverence and offerings and kind of like just creating a kind of devotional relationship, because it kind of opens us. And then Buddha comes to her crown, either melts, sometimes it just melts into light, and the light will just kind of go into it, and we just imagine the light just kind of radiating through our bodies, and we just sit with that and feel that. Those qualities are just radiating through us, filling us, kind of empowering us. And what that's doing is basically stimulating those aspects of ourselves that are not being tapped into in our daily life because of our stuff, cultural stuff, what it is to be a human being. Got to go work and be you gotta work, you gotta buy stuff, and then you're gonna die, whatever, where there's like, no, actually you have Buddha nature. It's this extraordinary nature that's present, and it's just covered by all this conceptual, emotional stuff that's blocking that truth from shining. And then it goes further. So that's kind of stage one in the visualization tradition. It's kind of the deity yoga tradition. But then that unification, that kind of dissolving, the Buddha dissolving into you, can be taken further, where it dissolves, breaks down, and kind of evaporates your ordinary sense of self. So that kind of fixation of me just kind of dissolves into emptiness, kind of empty space, this kind of empty space of reality, that kind of objectless kind of wide open awareness. That's kind of the true nature of mind. And you stay with that for a while, stay in that space for a while. So that's starting to kind of break up that kind of habit of me-ness little by little. And then from that kind of empty space, we then arise ourselves as that Buddha deity. So with this understanding that the self is constructed, it's actually not substantially findable. We then we don't imagine a Buddha outside. We actually just imagine like we arise as a Buddha, almost like it's like a death kind of process, and like a kind of death and rebirth as in this kind of enlightened form of ourselves. And then we meditate on that for a while, and then or you can do mantras and kind of imagine that you're also just the same way, you're kind of radiating out these qualities to others in your life, and kind of blessing the environment, and sending out light and so forth. Again, kind of basically just brightening the mind, brightening awareness, awakening our kind of compassionate side, awakening our compassionate nature, and breaking out of this kind of gross, kind of coarse level of self. So it gets more complex, but initially there's this kind of because that's a little bit complicated. Like you start with Buddha outside of you. It's a way of like, and for some people they can't handle the idea of Buddha nature, so it's more comfortable if the Buddha's outside. Or some people like, oh yeah, I'm Buddha, and it just becomes like a kind of a ego, what do you call it? Inflation or whatever. So yeah, anyway, so typically you start with the Buddha outside, and then kind of having this blessing kind of union for a while, until understanding of emptiness and the true nature of self, from Buddha's point of view, it starts to, once we start to grasp what they're talking about, like, or at least have some understanding of what the emptiness teachings on emptiness means. And yeah, and then over time we start to visualize the Buddha as ourselves. Because that's what's going to happen. It's they in the tradition they say that's the using the result as the path. So you're kind of taking the end as your stepping stones. You're kind of the end go to the resultant state as a kind of stepping stone.
Is all this? I'm just throwing this out there. Is all this meditation and awareness necessary to achieve Buddhahood? I mean, I could just, go about my regular day and just try and be a nice guy and, do all these nice things for people and feel it inside as well. That almost, I feel, would give me almost the same result towards that path.
Yeah, I don't think there's necessarily a hard, well, it depends on who you ask, I guess. In some ways, the traditions say Buddhahood, at some point we have to sit still, and just because it's subtle, like, but there's the path of service, the path, of kindness, devotion, where they're more active, you're not sitting on the cushion, you're offering, like you said, compassion and love as you go through your life.
Right.
And those complement each other. If you're living that way and then you sit down, your meditation will benefit from that. And if you also,
True.
And vice versa, if you're having stable practice, that you're kind of cultivating those qualities by yourself in this kind of formal protected training, then that also can strengthen your mind and emotions throughout the day. So ideally that's kind of the general formula.
Yeah.
But
I'm not knocking it. I mean, I'm just putting it out there for argument's sake. Because I know the benefits of sitting down and meditating for whatever amount of time a day it is. So.
Yeah.
Personally, anyway.
Yeah. It's hard to say, but there's so many. There's a saying. There's 84,000 doors to liberation. Meaning, there's just so many ways people will discover freedom. So, I don't want to say hard line, but yeah. But in general, I think there is, for those who are kind of can do it, that sitting practice has kind of particular benefits of just developing oneself. If we do it effectively, I mean, just sitting down and not moving doesn't necessarily, but if there is an effective training process happening, because the tradition does say, in terms of having a direct experience of the nature of reality, it's kind of empty, ungraspable, infinite kind of nature of everything. The quality of our awareness has to be quite strong. So our sense of present awareness has to be quite strong. And that's just hard to do if we're not sitting. you're not sitting for long periods of time. It's just hard to cultivate the single-pointed concentration or the peaceful abiding, the kind of balanced, non-conceptual mind. It has to be a very powerful, non-conceptual mind that sees that kind of reality, to have it stick. And then maybe we'll have glimpses of it, but then like have to keep coming back to it again and again to be able to really kind of stabilize it, and then eventually to where it becomes irreversible.
That is true. Yeah.
So, yeah.
And they talk about the where you get to the point where the object you're observing and you cease to be separate, and you become one with whatever object you're observing. There's no separation.
Yeah. Yeah.
So sorry, that would be like a quality, like any object, or is that a physical object, an emotional object?
Whatever you're meditating on,
right?
There's you meditating, and there's the object you're meditating on. At some point, there's going to be no difference. You and the object are the same thing.
Yeah.
There's no separation.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like there's like a sense of I am meditating, I'm doing something, and then that will dissolve to like there's just meditation happening. And then maybe that could even, there's just so many ways we conceptualize things.
No.
And they all just gotta go. Yeah.
And I don't think any of us have been there. So
yeah. Maybe we get there, like it's just like this, like, oh, then that now I'm making that into a thing. And oh, now I'm making that into a thing. Yeah. Oh, I'm doing it again. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Good night's sleep helps.
Yeah, sleep is because the Buddhist point of view, the sleep, when we go to sleep, the more superficial mind, the servant's mind, kind of they shut down. So then it's more, we go into a deeper state of our consciousness. Which eventually we're trying to activate into our waking state, that kind of deep mind, kind of clear light.
I guess there are some yogis that actually meditate themselves into death. But they meditate so deep, falling in the stages of death, that an outside observer would assume that they were dead.
Yeah. 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 Yeah, they say because they say the subtlest mind isn't dependent on the body. So yeah, you can some yogis, they can stop breathing for quite a long time. And it's okay because somehow the subtle mind is still kind of, because they're so deeply in contact with the subtlest mind that they don't die, but with the physical, they're not engaged in the coarser states of mind that are connected with the brain and the nervous system and all that. Yeah, and so some of the yogis, when they train, so when they do die, maybe you've heard this, where they can stay in that, from Buddhist point of view, that when you die, when you're going through the dying process, the senses collapse, the coarser kind of conceptual minds collapse. It's like the mind's kind of withdrawing into the subtlest mind. There's a kind of process that happens, and when that subtlest mind dawns and kind of opens, those yogis who have contacted that subtlest mind in their daily life consciously and are able to stay with it, they just stay in meditation after their brain dead. They're clinically dead, but they stay in that clear light meditation. They can stay for a few weeks. And the Dalai Lama has been working with some scientists to be able to get to the body when this has been happening, when there's some yogis, like some lamas, meditation masters who are staying in that meditation to see if they can measure it somehow. Because the only thing that we can, so far, the body doesn't decay when they're in that meditation. So a week later, 2 weeks later, there's no preservation happening, but the physical bodies stay supple. But they're trying to, and there's no brain activity. So the neuroscience, general neuroscience, they haven't been able to measure anything. And there was some study, I think, that happened last year, but I don't know what the results were. I think they actually got a team there to do some research while it was happening, which is wild to imagine. But it's not so uncommon with some of the really great masters. My main Buddhist teacher's father died a few years ago and stayed in I think it was about 7 days in Nepal. Yeah, very interesting. And there's a story about the 16th Karmapa, not the present Karmapa, but the previous Karmapa. He died in the 80s, and he died in a Chicago hospital. And he was in the hospital for quite a while. He had, I think, stomach cancer, and a kind of extraordinary being. And just everybody in the hospital fell in love with him. He was just kind of this radiant person who was peaceful and happy every day, apparently, when he was dying of stomach cancer. And so usually with US law, you have to kind of move the body immediately, but because they allowed, before he died, they were checking, like, we need to in our tradition, we don't move the body for 3 days while there's meditation happening and so forth. We can do that. And they allowed that to happen with the 16th Karmapa. And they interviewed the doctor. And I think another quality that happens, the center of the heart stays warm, because some reason the subtle mind's located in the heart chakra, the heart center. And so they brought in his main doctor from the Chicago hospital, and he was talking about how they put his hand over his heart and it was still warm after the 3rd day. So it'd be interesting to see what the scientific tests, if they're able to measure anything or kind of connect anything. But it's hard because you can't really just plan. Like when somebody dies, it's kind of got to be quick to swoop in and see. Yeah, but very lofty. It's people who meditate a lot be able to do that, and that's one of the goals in the more later stages of the deity practice, is to manifest that subtle mind, so we can get more and more familiar with it. Because they say that if we have that subtle mind, it's the most powerful mind to have that recognition of reality. If we're in that most subtle mind and we have that kind of insight into selflessness, it's the kind of most powerful state of mind to have that recognition in. So liberation can happen fast. Yeah, it's a strange thing, 'cause hearing about these yogis meditating the clear light of death all the time, but it's not really mainstream or known or scientifically acknowledged. But yeah. It's also interesting. So in my program, I'm taking a class on transpersonal psychology, which is kind of necessarily want to get into trying to define that, but um, talking about research, scientific research, and different models of mind outside of the Western model, and different models of human experience from different, indigenous traditions, different world traditions, religious traditions, all over and how to, study those in a way within our own cultural lens, you know, uh, scientific culture, and parapsychology. Have you heard of parapsychology? Kind of, it's like
Paranormal psychology?
kind of, yeah. So yeah, psychology of states, mental experiences that are outside the box of Western psychology that we understand. Yeah. And I was reading that like some of the actual scientific rigor of parapsychology research is actually stronger than a lot of regular psychology. But even if the science looks good, if the results kind of don't fit, like they're still not necessarily accepted. It's interesting. Like if, like it's like, okay, we did a test and the result, it's like, oh yeah, that's looking like that may have some basis, but like that doesn't make any sense to our models of mind. So it's hard to get traction.
Well, how would you track something like intuition or, having a feeling about something? I mean,
Right. Yeah, so it's hard. Yeah, so some things are hard. Yeah, it's hard to do, and then some things they actually have done a pretty good job at it. And even if they do a pretty good job at it, if it's still the findings actually are still kind of like head scratching from Western science, and they still get kind of like, oh, there must have been some problem with the must have been some problem with the study. I just read that recently.
In New York City, well, in New York State, I don't know if it's in the city, they do a lot of MRI work on the central nervous system and trying to map it to the subtle channels and the winds and all that stuff and the chakras. And they have correlations, but they're functional correlations, not physical correlations. Like on the spinal cord, they can't find the heart chakra, but they can find the activity of the heart chakra is located in this area. It's like there's a functional correlation, not necessarily a physical correlation, which correlates well with the fact that the mind is not physical. But
yeah, right. Right. Yeah, and I saw there was what was the book? Yeah, there was a visual map of the nervous.
Was it Buddha's brain? I'm trying to think of the name of it.
It wasn't Buddha's brain. It was it was basically saying like the stomach and the gut actually is kind of could be regarded as a second brain because there's more neurotransmitters or neuro.
I've heard that. Yeah.
Activity.
That would make sense.
Yeah. Yeah. There's more actually than the brain, this thing up here. Yeah, and there was a chart that showed the side of the body, and there was like these kind of webs of some type of nerve endings, but they were all correlated in the chakra points. They're all kind of coming out like kind of opening into from the spine, kind of towards the front of the body, all in the main chakra points, like here. Yeah, it's interesting. I think it makes sense. Yeah, and it makes sense. Like people who sit in 50,000 hours of meditation, they're getting very solid. They're very sensitive. So they're like, oh yeah, like here, if you do that, and here, this is what happens. So, put your, do this is what happens. It's, yeah. And just because it's not done through a machine doesn't necessarily mean it's not science, because it's replicable over and over and over again.
A lot of
And
people feel things through their gut. I mean, they get that feeling like right
yeah,
there.
yeah,
A feeling of knowing, or a feeling of, whatever it is that's going on at the time.
yeah, yeah. And the vagus nerve extends from the brain
Yeah, it does.
down to the gut, and there's a lot of interesting work with that. Yeah,
And the whole field of acupuncture is based on those plexuses, like there's a solar plexus. I know there's a plural for plexus. It might be plexi or something, but there's more than one. So I think that's what those webs.
Yeah. Yeah. And so with visualization practice, a lot of it's working on that kind of subtle energy system, like that's similar. It worked with acupuncture. So visualizing the light kind of radiating through the body in certain ways, and kind of it's actually stimulating and kind of repairing and balancing the kind of subtle body. So it's not a random thing that they're doing. Actually, even like with if nectar and light, imagining like thick nectar kind of flowing through the body has a different kind of effect on the subtle energy system. So it's kind of healing that in a way. Because also once that you can say in a way you start to heal the subtle energy system. I don't know if you're had acupuncture. Sometimes you just feel like more balanced, peaceful afterwards. Sometimes the discursiveness and the emotional imbalances, fix that kind of subtle system. It can actually kind of help fix the mental function, what our emotional body or in kind of emotional system can be fixed. Not fixed, but healed and function more naturally. So it's not out of balance. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, sorry, I got on tangent. We could have, it'd have been nice to do the meditation. Yeah. If you have, how are we on time? Do you all want to wrap up in 5 minutes, or could go 15 minutes and try visualization?
Let me.
We can do it next week.
Let me check the calendar real quick. I mean, if there's no one coming on, then we can.
Oh, right.
Let's see. I go here. I go here, and I go here. Calendar.
Yeah, maybe we can devote half the next session to doing an actual meditation process.
There is something coming up at 7 o'clock Mountain Time.
7, okay. It's 5 to. May have to be.
We do it next week for me.
Yeah.
You guys.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Maybe we'll do half discussion, half meditation next week, and we can do we'll do a meditation on the Buddha. Let's see what that's like.
Sounds good. Yeah. That was fast.
Yeah,
fast hour. Yeah,
hours a quick class. Yeah. Yeah, it's the first one I've done. It's just an hour. It's usually an hour and a half. No. Okay. Maybe, yeah, we can finish with the dedication. And just recognizing our inner value of love and compassion. And from that valued place, recognizing any sparks or seeds, insights, any good energy that we may have generated together in our chat. May it be a cause that ripens into happiness, and peace, love, and compassion to its fullest extent in ourselves. So that we can support others and give lasting value to all living beings, enabling them to also awaken their full potential. All right. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you. Good night.
Nice chatting.
Thank you all.
Yeah, have a good evening.
Okay.